Welcome to Let's Talk Gardening. I'm Norma Samuel with the University of Florida Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences, UF-IFAS Extension, Sumter County. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to you about insects and diseases. I'll go over some that we're currently seeing in our garden. And yes, as expert gardeners, we do have insect and disease problems. The critical thing is scouting your garden every time you come out. So when you come out to water or just to walk around and, observe the beauty of your garden, lift up the leaves, see what insects are under there, if any. A lot of them like to hide under the leaves. Know the different life stages of the different insects, which ones are good, which ones are bad. Also, it's good for you to know differences between nutritional problems and diseases. And we're expecting rains this week, and with that will come, diseases, especially probably in the tomatoes. We'll see some of those. So I do encourage you to observe the video that we're going to be showing you closely on the different insects, because you'll see what you can look at in your garden right now. With regards to diseases, there are three things that are usually needed for disease to occur. You need to have a favorable environment, a susceptible host, and the pathogen itself, or the disease organism. And once those three things exist, you're likely to have a disease, and we refer to that as the disease triangle. And so as a gardener, you want to break that triangle. So it could be that you're picking up the disease leaves off the ground and disposing of them. In terms of the environment, you want to make sure that you're not watering late in the evening, or you're using drip irrigation. If you're hand watering at the base of the plant and not, overhead. So that will help with the condition. Also, the spacing of your plants are going to be important. Another thing that we recommend with management of diseases is that you plant at a specific time, especially for your vegetables. If you're planting at the recommended times that we provide you, then if you're doing that, you'll get away from some of the insect and disease problems that are prevalent at certain times of the year. And then your crop rotation, knowing which plants are in the same family. So your solanaceous crops, which are your tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, they're all in the same family. So rotating from one family to the next is going to be important. So if we're planting tomatoes in this area this season, next season you want to follow with something from another family. So you can follow it, let's say with sweet potatoes, or you can follow it with corn, something outside of the solanaceous crop family. So those are some pointers. So now let's go and see what I have happening in the garden. This is my firebush plant, and I like to say every Florida gardener should have a firebush. This is another one of those perennials that die back every year, but it does come back to a huge shrub. Between now and the end of the year, it's going to be a beautiful shrub that has reddish orange tinge to the leaves, and an orange tubular flowers that does attract butterflies and hummingbirds. And it's one that I recommend every gardener in Florida have in their garden. Usually I don't have any pest problems on this plant, but for some reason this year I'm noticing that I'm having an aphid problem. And aphids are a type of insect that have piercing, sucking mouth parts. And what you can see happening here is that there's some distortion of the leaves. So you can see the leaves are being, distorted on here because of the aphids sucking the juices from the plant. Also notice that the aphids are green. So let me get a little closer. And these aphids are green, they're pear-shaped. And aphids can be many different colors. So they can be green, they can be brown, they can be yellow, they can be red. And some of them are specific to certain types of plants. And so they're very easy for you to identify. As I said, they're pear-shaped body. And they also have usually two cornicles at the back end, and that's a good way for you to determine what these insects are. So as you can see, they're visible to the naked eye. Insects with piercing, sucking mouth parts, they usually secrete what we call honeydew, and these are excess liquid that they excrete, and so that's why the leaves look so shiny. And as you notice there's ants running around and they're feeding on the honeydew. And after a while, sometimes you can see a black fungus called sooty mold growing on plants that have heavy honeydew secretion. And the sooty mold doesn't really do any damage to the plant. However, because it covers the surface of the leaf, it affects the area available for photosynthesis. And so you can see, the plant declining over time. So there you can see the ants running around and, as I said, they're feeding on that honeydew secretion. These insects can be easily controlled with insecticidal soap or horticultural oils, and these are contact insecticides. You want to make sure you're getting good coverage. So you want to get up underneath the leaves and get that really well, because contact insecticides only kill the insects that they come into contact with. We'll probably need, maybe 2 applications of that insecticidal soap, but it will get them under control quite easily. So again, this is the firebush, and if you don't have a firebush, I do recommend you get a firebush for your garden. This is quite unusual that it does have aphids, but typically we do not have any insect problems on this particular plant. So it's one that's very easy to grow. As of 2 days ago, this was once a lovely growing milkweed plant, fully leafed out. And this morning, when I came outside to water the plants, I was surprised that the monarch butterfly caterpillars were already out, and they totally devoured this milkweed plant. And here on this next one, it's not devoured yet. Let me zoom in. You can see the milkweed is being eaten there live and direct by the monarch butterfly caterpillar. And they're voracious feeders. And as I said, 2 days ago, this plant was fully leafed out, and then now all the leaves are gone. I don't really worry about the damage done because it's a host plant for the beautiful monarch butterfly, and I'm okay with the caterpillar feeding on the milkweed plant. The other insect that you see roaming around here is the milkweed bug. And these are a nuisance pests, and they're what we call true bugs. They have piercing, sucking mouth parts. And insects with piercing, sucking mouth parts usually have what we produce what we call a stippling effect on the leaves. And so anytime you see a leaf which looks like what you're seeing here, that's called a stippling effect. And that's every time that insect uses its piercing, sucking mouth parts, it leaves that damage there. So you know that that insect has been feeding. You'll see this type of effect also from thrips, from spider mites, and that's a common sign that you have those insects. These insects I don't worry about. They just feed on the milkweed. If you think that you need to control them, you can use you can just tap them in a bucket of soapy water, or you can spray them with insecticidal soap, and that will help to control them. But as I said, they're nuisance pests, and I don't really do anything to control them. So I consider milkweed to be like one of the sacrificial plants in my garden. They'll grow. Sometimes I'm able to get a nice, bloom and enjoy the blooms. And then sometimes I don't. The caterpillars enjoy them. And I'm okay with that. So it's okay for you to have some sacrificial plants in now moved on to our cabbage plot. We have quite a few cabbage plants still in the ground, and we're now having a late arrival of black rot disease, and I'm happy that it's arrived late because it's one of the most destructive diseases of brassicas. And your brassicas are your cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, kale, collards, all those are in that family. It's a bacterial disease, and it thrives during temperatures of 80 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what we've had for a few weeks. And on the cabbage leaves, you have openings at the tips that we refer to as hydrotodes. And so the disease manifests itself as a V-shaped lesion, as you're seeing here. So you see that V-shaped lesion there, and this is a good one for you to see the start of the disease right there. So you have that V-shaped lesion. And so I'm sure when you've looked at cabbage plants, like especially in the mornings, you'll see like a dead droplet of water right at the tip where you have a vein. And so that's where the bacterium enters, and as it goes into the plant, it creates that V-shaped lesion, and so you have that browning and you have that yellowing that we refer to as a halo. And so the bacteria travels through the vascular system, or as I like to say, the plumbing system of the plant, and it clogs it. And so with that, you can have eventual dieback of the cabbage plant, or even rotting of the cabbage head. It's very difficult to control this disease if you have it early on in the crop. We recommend, spraying with copper fungicides, and you may have to do that about every 2 to 3 weeks, spraying regularly with copper fungicide. Because this is a late arrival and the cabbage is about ready to be harvested, we won't be applying anything to these for control. So what we would do is that we would take these leaves out, and we will not be putting these leaves in the compost pile because the bacteria can survive for up to 2 years in the soil. And so the recommendation is for you to burn these leaves. So that's how we will be discarding of them. You can also bury them very deeply. Do not plant any brassicas in this spot or any spot where you have black rot disease, you want to make sure you're not planting any brassicas in that area for 2 to 3 years. So we're going to be rotating with another crop in this bed for the next few years. So we'll probably move to tomatoes or peppers. We can also plant sweet potato, which is probably what we'll plant here. But knowing what plants are in the same family, that does help a lot when you're trying to control disease problems. So we want to rotate outside of the brassica family with something else. The cabbage is edible, so there's nothing wrong with the cabbage itself. So we will be harvesting these, and once we take these out, the plant material that remains, we won't be putting it in the compost pile. So pick up as much of that leaf as possible, all of it preferably, and that way you're helping to control the disease. One thing I forgot to mention is that you should get your plant material or seeds from a reputable source, because it can also be seed borne. So getting your seeds from a reputable source. It takes a while for the disease to manifest itself. So I remember back in 2012 when I worked in Marion County, we had this disease problem, and the seedlings were perfectly healthy, and we had to pretty much get rid of all those plants because they came down very early with black rot disease. So it's good for you to know the different diseases that you're encountering in the garden so you can take appropriate control measures. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Let's Talk Gardening. I'm Norma Samuel with the University of Florida IFAS Extension, Sumter County.